everyone. It is September 8th, 2022, and we are interrupting regular programming to bring you breaking news. It is with deep sadness that Buckingham Palace has announced Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, the longest reigning monarch in Commonwealth history, has died at the age of 96. She is the only queen most of us have ever known, so this is a monumental loss for not only the UK, but Canada and the world. You can see there the Union Jack on top of Buckingham Palace at half-mast on what is a deeply sad day, not only for the Commonwealth, but the entire world. I'm joined now by CTV's chief international correspondent, Paul Workman, outside Buckingham Palace in London. Paul, you have been reporting all morning about the grave concerns for the Queen's health. I'm sure there's such a sense of solemnity where you are right now. What is it like, and how did the announcement finally come?
Well, it's a very solemn moment here, obviously, and there hasn't been an announcement that I have seen except for the lowering of the flag just a few minutes ago. What should happen next is that a footman should cross the forecourt at Buckingham Palace and post a notice on an easel just at the gates of the palace itself, and that will be the official notice that the Queen has died. This is known as D-Day, the first day when the announcement is made, setting in place a series of events leading up to her funeral, probably in about 10 days, I believe. There was a code name for this. It was called London Bridge is Down. That was supposed to be the moment when the announcement of the Queen's passing would take place. We've watched all day with great interest and great sadness of what was going on in Balmoral, the fact that her family rushed to her bedside when the news broke this morning that her doctors were very concerned about her health, and of course through the passing day the crowds have been building a little bit here at Buckingham Palace and as well as at Balmoral Palace where she died, as this country will now have to come to grips with the loss of a monarch, as you said, Omar, who has been with us for 70 years, and there will be a great outpouring of I think, grief, concern, and just deep feeling for this woman who has led the country. She's been the matriarch, if you like, of the country and of the Commonwealth for those 7 decades.
And Paul, as you mentioned, a woman who has seen so much throughout. It's really been a steady hand in a world full of tumult and flux, and to think that just a few months ago she celebrated her platinum jubilee, her husband, of course, Prince Philip, passing away last year. How are people remembering her today, you think?
Well, you know, she used to talk about Philip being the strength of her family. She's been the strength of this country for such a long time. I don't think the British were quite ready to let her go yet, even though they knew that her age at 96 was a problem and that her health had been failing over the last while. But she is so beloved and has come through the decades just as sort of a really strong presence that the country looked to for guidance, for leadership, and all of that. And so it's going to be, I think it's going to take some getting used to the fact that she is no longer here, right? Generations of the British have simply grown up with Queen Elizabeth. Elizabeth is there. She is our queen. It felt like she was always going to be here, but of course that was never possible. We all knew that. And so, you know, the next stage will be what happens when Prince Charles takes over, if he will be King Charles, if that's the name that he chooses. And we'll see that, we'll see the workings of that over the next few days as well, Omar.
And again, if you are just joining us right now, you can see the Union Jack there at half-mast atop Buckingham Palace. The palace has just announced a few minutes ago, in fact, that Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II has, in fact, passed away.
I remember when she came to the throne. I could
in
remember
Balmoral,
the day.
Scotland, where she has been since July. Paul, when you think of the Queen, I mean, this is a woman again who in so many ways has personified and embodied the institution, the monarchy. And now that she's no longer there, I'm sure a lot of people will be asking what happens to the institution. Can the institution, which of course goes back more than 1,000 years, can it survive? Can it continue? Can it adapt without this towering force?
Well, that's a debate that's been happening inside the country for quite some time. I mean, the royal family have had scandals, they've had difficulties, and those have been the questions that have always been asked. Okay, what happens when Elizabeth is gone? What happens when the Queen is no longer there? Because she has been the leader and the strength of the family. Sometimes there were difficulties with her children, to her great concern, but she was the sort of the strength, always there, this leader, as I said earlier, sort of the matriarch of the country, and we've seen her in place for 7 decades. And I put together an obituary for the Queen that, you know, you always do this in journalism. So if we have it, I think it would be great to run that now about her life and her history and her leadership of this country over the 7 decades.
In a long life marked by milestones, the Queen's 90th birthday was perhaps the most significant. A moment of splendor and deep affection, shared with her husband Philip, with the nation she had ruled from the age of 25, and with a joke about getting old.
How I will feel if people are still singing Happy Birthday in December remains to be seen.
In an ever-changing world, it seemed there was always one constant, and her name was Elizabeth.
My lords and members of the House of Commons.
Christened Elizabeth Alexandra Mary Windsor, a princess destined to be queen by a royal twist of fate. With the abdication of Edward VIII in 1936, Elizabeth's father, the Duke of York, took up the crown, and the world began to notice his 11-year-old daughter, suddenly heir to the throne. She was famously pictured during the Blitz, driving an ambulance, the royal family doing its wartime duty. By then, she was already in love with a Greek prince she met as a teenager. 50 years later, she said they were still in love.
He is someone who doesn't take easily to compliments, but he has quite simply been my strength and stay all these years.
Their first son, Charles, was still a toddler when life for the Windsors changed forever. With the death of her father, England and the Commonwealth had a new young monarch. She got to know Canada as Canadians got to know her. One of her last tributes, sending best wishes for the country's 150th birthday.
I have watched Canada develop into a remarkable nation. You have earned a reputation as a welcoming, respectful, and compassionate country.
Life for the Queen wasn't always pomp and ceremony. She faced her own horrible times. 1992, the year Prince Charles and Diana separated, to be followed by much worse. A terrible car accident in Paris. The Princess of Wales mourned in an outpouring of grief and shock. The Queen steadfast. In spite of rumors, she and her daughter-in-law never got along. The monarchy endured, and the next 2 decades brought new honors and triumphs. A golden jubilee, followed by a diamond jubilee, and the moment when she became the oldest sitting monarch in British history.
Inevitably, a long life can pass by many milestones. My own is no exception.
There to witness the marriage of her grandson William to Kate Middleton, a future king, as she was once a future queen.
Oh, there you are.
Driven into lockdown by the COVID pandemic like much of the world, yet finding new high-tech ways to carry out her royal duties.
Still not.
suffering through Prince Harry's traumatic and acrimonious break from the royal family, forcing him to choose between duty and his new life in America, and saying goodbye to her beloved Philip after more than 7 decades of marriage. Partners in life, partners in service to the British Crown.
There was
And
a
it
lot
was
of
that she celebrated her plight
anger at
early,
Boris
an
Johnson for not
achievement
showing up
counted in
there,
years
leaving her all
of the
by
boundless
herself.
affection of the British
And
people.
maybe she didn't want him around then because she said she should.
Refusing to give in to issues of health and aging, appearing on the balcony of Buckingham Palace 3 times. A life of duty and show accepted
Wow, look
as both a
at that
privilege
coach, eh?
and a burden.
I declare before you all that my whole life, whether it's been long or short, shall be devoted to your service and to the service of our great imperial family to which we all belong.
A promise made and a promise kept to the end of her reign. Elizabeth II, Queen. Paul Workman, CTV News, London.
The country will now go into a period of mourning. Queen Elizabeth's body will be brought back to Buckingham Palace and then transferred to Westminster Palace, the Houses of the Parliament, where she will lie in state, and of course where tens of thousands of the British people will want to come to pay their respects and be a part of this very solemn moment in British history. Omar.
And Paul, you can see there a crowd gathering outside Buckingham Palace where the Union Jack is flying at half-mast. And again, if you're joining us, Buckingham Palace announcing a short time ago that Queen Elizabeth II has in fact died at Balmoral at the age of 96. And if you look on the bottom left corner of your screen, you can see the official death notice that has been put out there, which of course is all part of the protocol. And over the next few days, we will be seeing not only the United Kingdom plunged into a period of mourning, but the entire Commonwealth and much. I want to bring in now CTV's Danielle Hananjan.
Well, I'm glad they got rid of Boris Johnson just in time, because he would have been just such a piece of crap.
Retrospective that this was a woman who, until the last day, was really bound by a sense of duty and service. I mean, just a couple of days ago, we saw a photo of her with the new Prime Minister, Liz Truss.
It is, and if you're watching from home, if you go online, you will see that the royal family's webpage statements that was sent to the reporters of the royal family, and it reads: the Queen died peacefully at Balmoral this afternoon. The King and the Queen consort will remain at Balmoral this evening and will return to London tomorrow, Thursday, 8th of September, 2022. I have to say, there's a sense of disbelief, really, as you mentioned, Omar, that she was seen publicly 48 hours ago shaking hands with the outgoing Prime Minister and then with the incoming Prime Minister, that she was standing, although clearly, she was not very comfortable standing at all, which is why she didn't come back to London for what was the traditional handover. But for this to happen 48 hours later,
She was a very sweet
and of
woman.
course, even as the hours went by today, the senior members of the royal family converging on Balmoral, there's still a sense of disbelief, because there's a part of this woman that's almost eternal. Because for the vast majority of people, she has been in the backgrounds of their lives, either as Princess Elizabeth,
they just posted the
and then
sign
as
there. There was
Queen Elizabeth
two
for the
people
past
walking back
70
there.
years. And having covered the Queen now for 9 years, it wasn't that long ago, even in her early 90s, that we didn't talk about the demise of the monarch and Her Majesty's death. You know, it was still sort of taboo. And I remember, you know, the first piece in the paper that came out with the details regarding her funeral, and there was sort of a collective gasp because, you know, it was real, and it is real. They've been planning this for years and years and years, Omar. What happens now? Well, if I think that the initial plan, if it works out, is that her body will be carried to London by train, and that is called Operation Unicorn. If that doesn't work out, she'll be flown back to London, and that is Operation Overstudy. And then, as Paul, my colleague, mentioned, there'll be 10 days of official mourning. Today's D-Day, and it'll be known as D+1 and D+2, and so on and so forth. But I think you will. What I have learned over the years is that even if people are not fans of the institution, even if they're not fans of the royal family, the Queen remains a separate entity. Why? Because she has weathered many, many storms, because like in every family there are soap operas, and this one was no exception. But she managed to weather the storms, and for that, many people have a great deal of affection for her.
I think, Danielle, that is a very apt point. I mean, whether you are a fan of the monarchy or not, she is somebody who epitomized and embodied the picture and the portrait of resilience. I mean, the most photographed woman in the world, under tremendous scrutiny. And we can't forget, this is not a position anybody signs up for. It is something you are born into, and something that was thrust upon her, and she has weathered so much. Here, of course, is the official death notice outside the gates of Buckingham Palace. I'm having a little bit of trouble reading that from my vantage point, but again, a live shot there outside Buckingham Palace, all part of a sophisticated,
They're very simple, actually.
and a sophisticated protocol that we will be seeing in the next 2 days and weeks to come. Let's bring in Auto Bureau Chief Joyce Napier right now. Joyce, the Queen, of course, was very fond of Canada and visited this country more than any other in the Commonwealth. I know we are waiting for the Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, who is in Vancouver, to make a few comments. What are you hearing right now in the capital?
Well, what we know, Omar, is the Prime Minister today had to make an announcement on affordability. Obviously, this announcement will be cancelled. We know as well that moments ago, maybe an hour or so ago,
We are where? Over here. Okay. One is Rio Hall. Okay. So this is not bad. We can just walk up here and around and we'll be there. Thanks. I think we'll have to leave the car where it is. I don't think we're going to find a parking spot along the river there. It's going to be, we're lucky to get a spot, so we'll keep it here. Or you can sponsor one of these things. You can get your name put on it. Oh, good, a drinking fountain. Oh, sweetie. So glad you've done this. Here,
I am too.
I'll hold it for you while you drink.
No thanks, I'm not thirsty.
I know, I am. I'm so glad that, you know, we can come in here and we haven't been asked for our
ID.
IDs for anything, you know, we're just, everybody's allowed in.
I did bring my passport though, just in case.
Yeah, I've got some ID too, so. Look at all the flowers up there. Oh, the mackerel. I'm going to take a picture of that. I guess we better taking bikes and park them here. That's good to know. Bonjour.
Hello.
Pretty well, pretty well. I guess there's a book to be signed up there.
Right, so if you keep heading up the path, right around the wall, the book is right outside the entrance, so there's no need for security.
And there's pens there, we have to bring our own?
Yes, exactly. There's pens provided.
Okay, thank you.
Perfect, thank you.
Appreciate your assistance.
Of course.
This is simpler than I thought it might be. You've got a shot of the
Yes.
URL with a
Yes.
flag at half-mast?
Yes. That way.
Where's the book to be signed? Oh, over here. The woman down at the bottom said we were supposed to go this way.
Yeah, up and around.
Yeah, okay, thank you. You're filming this whole thing.
Yes.
On.
Okay. I'll sign here.
Sounds good. Hello, bonjour. You can come right up here. Feel free to grab a pen, and then in one of the boxes you can write a message in here, as well as if you just want to sign your name, you can just do that as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
And where we're from? You want Bill or William?
Right here.
There.
Did you take a picture of it, Connor?
Yes, I'm doing it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Here we go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You did take a picture, right?
I did.
Of the your signature.
Yes.
Good. No public access beyond this point. Oh, I guess we had to head back. Oh, Your Majesty the Queen.
Oh, nice.